Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today's podcast is going to be on stress. And as usual, I'm going to start this podcast off with a quote. You can't always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what goes on inside. And that's a quote by Dyer. Hans Selye defines stress as the body's nonspecific response to any demand, whether it is caused by or results in pleasant or unpleasant stimuli. Stress is only bad if we make it to be bad. Stress can be used to create a lot of positive responses in our bodies, but a lot of us, even when I say the word stress, it has like a negative connotation to it. Like when you think of stress, you think of like headaches, being exhausted, being tired, and you know, your eyes feeling like they're gonna bulge out of your head. Like all of the symptoms that are associated with stress, those physical negative symptoms that are associated with stress. But stress isn't always a bad thing. You know, that's the perception that we commonly place on it, and that society places on it. But, you know, there's been a lot of times in my life, and I know a lot of times in my audience's life as well, when you felt stress and it hasn't been, you know, a negative thing. Maybe you haven't, maybe you didn't associate the feelings that you had at that time as being stress, but it may have been stress. It just had a different perception placed on it. So you didn't automatically give it that negative connotation. But stress in and of itself is not a bad thing. Stress is just a word to describe a type of response to something. And that response can be good or it can be bad. It can be pleasant or unpleasant. You can make stress work for you just as easily as you can make it work against you. It's all a matter of perception. Remember perception. Remember that, as we've discussed in podcasts previous to this one, that that only constant in every situation that you're going to go through is yourself. You are going to be the one thing that doesn't change throughout the journey that you take through life. And I don't mean as in you won't change as in you won't develop into being a stronger person or a better person. I mean you won't change as in the fact that, you know, even if people may be with you or you might be going through it by yourself, you know, you're still going to be the one primarily involved in it because it's your situation. You're always going to be that one constant. So if we learn to control ourselves, then everything else becomes easy. We can't always control the things outside of ourselves, but we can always control the things out inside of ourselves. And what that boils down basically is to a choice. Like, am I choosing to allow this person, this situation, this incident in my life to create a stressful response, to elicit a stressful reaction in reference to it? It all boils down to a choice. You know, we as human beings have the power of choice, and that's a very, very strong and very unique ability that we have. You know, like when animals in the wild, they don't have a choice to be, you know, scared or choice to be stressed out. Like a lot of the times their existence is based on survival. So it's either they're in that fight or flight mindset, that stressed out mindset, or they're just chilling, you know, trying to focus on the things that their body tells them to do at that point in time, whether it's to eat or sleep or, you know, whatever it may be. But us as humans, we have a choice to like decide what we're going to do from one moment to another. We have a choice to decide if we're going to let things bother us or we're going to let things get to us. We have a choice to decide that today is going to be different from yesterday. We have that choice. And that choice is extremely powerful, especially in stressful situations, because at the end of the day, it all boils down to choice, and it all boils down to your perception of what you're going through and the reality that you have put on that situation. Like always, perception drives reality. So if you perceive that the situation is stressful in a negative connotation type of way, then it's going to be stressful and it's going to elicit those symptoms that you feel physically when you're stressed out that are bad for you, like high blood pressure, heart problems, and stuff like that. But you can also have the perception that stress is not a bad thing, stress is good. And then you'll also reap the benefits likewise of having a positive mindset and being in a positive headspace. Working out in the gym is a form of stress that you put your body through, but this stress helps to create a healthier mind and body. You Stress can be a wonderful motivator. We can use stress to elicit a response in ourselves, like, hey, I just want to get from under this stress, or I want this stress to stop. So you can use that as a motivator to be like, hey, I'm going to push through a few more hours just so I don't have to have the stress of dealing with this tomorrow. So it could be a motivator, and likewise it could be a bad thing. Like, you could be so stressed out at work that it affects your family, it affects your health, it affects, you know, just everything that is outside of that situation. The stress can pour over into it, which is why we have to learn control. Because if you learn how to control, the different areas of your life, you can build like emotional dams up to what you're dealing with. You can have your work life, but then your work life doesn't cut into your family life, and your family life, within that you create time for yourself, because if you create time for everybody else and not yourself, then that can be stressful as well. You got to have an outlet. For some people, their family is their outlet, and for some, it isn't. But that just comes with your life and how you're living it. So you have to dictate to yourself, what is and isn't acceptable. And creating those dams, those safe spaces, and just separating everything out, dividing it up, is a way to, like, usher in control into your life. Like, putting everything in its respective places, putting everything in a hierarchy. Like, spirituality comes first, then family, then work, then, just break it down like that. I'm not saying that's the way that you should order everything in your life. Again, it's different for everybody else, but it's just a way to usher in some type of control in your life. And then once you have that list, you can devote your allotted time to each thing on that list, just to make sure everything gets its due time. There's 24 hours in a day. Most of it is spent at work for most of us. So then we're going to have to divide the remaining hours of the day amongst sleep and family, homework, school, and all that other stuff. And it's your 24. So however you break it up, that's totally on you. But in order to lead a less stressful life, we have to usher in more control, because stress comes from lack of control. We feel like we're not in control of our life. We feel like, we don't have any say in stuff. Like, if your boss like burdens you with work, or you're forced to do something that you don't necessarily want to do, that could create stress. So if we take back our control and we choose to usher so much time to each thing, that'll be a way to control the stress that we feel in life. And just like working out in the gym, it becomes stronger as we use it. Our muscles become stronger as we use them over time. And as you learn how to control things and break things down into their rightful place, over time you'll become better at allotting time for this and allotting time for that, and then you'll become stronger at doing it eventually over time. Just like fire can be used to warm us up when we're out in the woods, likewise it can be used to destroy. Successful application comes through understanding. And we've talked about that in the previous podcast, the difference between knowing and understanding. So, like, that you were stressed out, and that it's not good for you, because you go to your doctor tells you your blood pressure's high, or it's affecting this, or it's affecting that, and that stress isn't good for you. We hear it on TV, we read it on the internet, and we discuss it in podcasts, but do you understand why it's bad for you? And again, this podcast is just used to spark your interest in the subject matter and get you thinking and researching. And I went to a great website that I'm going to include in the show notes, and they broke stress down into, statistics about what people felt psychologically, what people felt physically, what it affected, where the stress was coming from, the different types of stress. It just broke everything down, like how to recognize stress and stuff like that. And it's a really, really great research. And I would recommend highly that you go into the references and you look up this resource and you just read over it. It's not a really long article. It's a short article. And then it has hyperlinks to other things that you can read on that are linked to it or in reference to it. But stress is one of those things that has an effect on many, many, many aspects of our body, depending on how we let it get to us. Um, I was reading through the article, just breezing through it. It can have effects on our heart, on our immune system, on our digestive system, on our sleep, on our moods, how we feel towards people, towards relationships. If stress isn't controlled, stress can totally throw our lives out of whack. So it's very important that we institute that control that we talked about earlier, where you put everything in its place and then you allot time for it. And when that time is up, the time is up. You don't let it spill over into something else. You have to allot for it, give it its time, give it its due respect. And then when the time is up, the time is up. Just like when you go into work, just like on a 9 to 5 schedule, if you go into work at 9 o'clock, from 9 to 5, you allot that time for work. That time is just for work. Whatever that entails, that is the time that you do it. And then after 5 o'clock, you allot maybe an hour or two for family, 3 hours or whatever. And then after that, you allot time for yourself where you could cool down, read, meditate, journal, decompress, and then, however you want to divide the rest of your time. But we all have 24 hours in a day, and how we use it is completely up to us. Even if we have a job that runs over that allotted time that we have set for work, it's still our choice to engage in work at home. Even if we say to ourselves like, hey, I can't control that what my boss tells me to do, or if my boss tells me to, take my work home and do my work after hours, or if I'm on call and stuff like that. Well, if that job doesn't serve you or allow you to exist in a space where you can respect, the different aspects of your life, then it may be time for you to get another job, because it might not be healthy for you. I can't dictate or determine what's healthy for you because everybody's different. But if work is taking over a majority of your life and you don't have time for anything else like family or time for yourself or things that you enjoy, like doing a hobby or something like that, on the outside looking in, I would say that's unhealthy, because it's not a proper balance in life. And life is all about balance, yin and yang duality. You can't have the good without the bad. So if you're at work all day and it's stressing you out, you got to have something good to balance it, whether it's going to the gym for 30 minutes, taking the kids to the park, reading a book, journaling, praying, decompress, some type of decompression. You need to have that, because it's just a healthy work-life balance. And it's the same thing for the opposite. You can't play too much and not work. If you play too much and you're not focusing on your passions, your dreams, fulfilling your duties around the house, doing the required things that you're required to do within the life that you're living, then you're just going to stay in one place. The wheels are going to be spinning, but you're not going to be getting any traction. And there's stress that can be associated with that as well, like not feeling fulfilled and not reaching your goals, your desires, and your dream. So it's all a spectrum, and you just have to analyze like where you sit on that spectrum, how that spectrum applies to you in your life, and then just divide it up accordingly in a way that serves you and suits you and benefits you, so that you can live a life in the most progressive manner that you can, in the manner that's most beneficial to you. Not to your job, not to anybody else, but what's most beneficial to you. Because if you're happy, then everybody else is going to be happy. Your work life is going to be good. Your home life is going to be good. Relationships are going to be good. And I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, because sometimes, you'll be happy and things outside you will be turmoil. But by and large, for the most part, your outside world is a reflection of your inside reality. So if you're not happy with yourself internally, you're not going to be happy with yourself externally. So your outside world is a reflection of your inside situation, your inside reality. So I know that we've been talking about stress, how it can be good and how it can be bad, and how, proper utilization and proper control of stress comes through understanding. So here, for this next little bit, I just wanted to cover, 4 different types of stress that I discovered through that article and some examples of those. So first and foremost, we have acute stress. So that's your fight or flight reflex. The body prepares to defend itself. That's when you get scared, or maybe you might have to do something physical, like being in the military, or being a firefighter, law enforcement, something like that. Or, I mean, even UFC fighters, it could be a host, a pilot. There were many situations where I got into the fight or flight reflex being a pilot. Um, but it's basically your body automatically responds to a stimulus. You can't control it. It's just there. And you don't have to be like in the careers that I just listed. Those are just some of the easier things to identify. But you could be, in your daily life and driving a car, and then something might happen that elicits that fight or flight reflex, and then you're just reacting at that point in time. It's really out of control. And it takes about 90 minutes for the metabolism to return to normal when the response is over. So even after you're out of that situation, your body is still coming down from it. That's why most of the time when you like go through some type of situation, like when you're really, really amped up, you get that adrenaline boost. And then like afterward, you feel really drained. You feel kind of tired, but your body's like coming down off of it, coming down off of that excitement, that rush that you just had, that fight or flight that your body was enabling you to be able to deal with any situation that was coming, or the situation that it perceived at the time as being dangerous. But again, like I said, it takes 90 minutes for your metabolism to return to normal. So if you're constantly going into this fight or flight reflex, over the course of the day, depending upon what type of situation you're going through, that 90 minutes builds upon itself. It might take 90 minutes, then you're back in it, and 90 minutes, then you're back in it. So it's just something to think about, when you're constantly going in and out of these stressful states. Second is chronic stress. This is the cost of daily living, like bills, your children, the job, the stress from the job. This is the stress we tend to ignore or push down. This is the stress we feel at work, but we say, hey, I got to work, I got to make money, I got to pay the bills, so it is what it is. Left uncontrolled, this stress affects your health, your body, and your immune system. So this is the type of stress that I was describing to you, that I was saying, unchecked, it can definitely have some physical effects. It can have some mental effects. It can have spiritual effects. I mean, this type of stress is the stress that kills people. Always worrying, always being stressed out about situations you can't control. Um, this is the stress that's not good for you. This is the stress that doctors warn us about. So we need to, and again, this comes with control. And again, knowing what we can control and what we can't control. So the foundation of control is understanding that we can only control everything within ourselves, and we can't control everything outside of ourselves. We may have some control on the world outside of ourselves, but by and large, we can only control our internal environment, our internal situation. So within that, that's when we start to set up our life accordingly, how we're going to set up our 24 hours a day to ensure that we can control our emotions, our situations, so that we're not constantly in that fight or flight, or feeling stress from this flowing over into this, and it's taking joy away from this. It creates that separation, and then we're not having to worry about one thing spilling over into another, because we have a healthy work-life balance. Third, we're going to talk about eustress. This is stress in daily life that has positive connotations, such as marriage, promotions, children again, winning the lottery, new friends, graduation. These are the things that, are good by and large. This is the flip side of the coin. When we talked about, chronic stress, having, you know, bad effects, and the stress that people are normally associated, like the word stress with, that's chronic stress. But on the other side of stress, how we've been talking about, how there is a good side of things and how it could positively affect you, that's eustress. Whenever you have children, I don't know how many people are out there are parents, or how many people who are listening that are parents, but when you have kids, it is the most awesome thing in the world from my perspective. Having a child is one of the highest moments in my life that I've ever had. But having kids can also be stressful, extremely, extremely stressful, because when they're that little, all they care about is themselves. When they're hungry, when they need to be changed, when they want to be picked up, when they want to play. And a lot of that time, is going to cut into your sleep time, cut into the time that you just want to chill. It's going to, cut into your you time altogether. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's a stress that I gladly welcome. into my life, because I feel that the benefit, is extremely high in reference to the stress that I receive from the situation. And that's the calculation that I've just made in reference to my life. Again, your life may be different. You may not feel that you need kids in your life right now, or that having children would be something that will relieve stress or to welcome stress into your life. That's just an example that I have. Um, Graduation was kind of stressful because on one side of the coin, I was entering a new level in life, a new stage in life. But then I also realized that life was going to change a lot from that point forward. I was going to college. I'm 18, I'm legally a man now. People aren't going to tell me what to do and take me places and basically hold my hand. I was out into the world. So I was happy that all of that stuff was coming into play. But at the same time, I realized, like, hey, the game's up. It's time to be for real this time. And then lastly, we got distress. This is stress in daily life that has negative connotations, such as divorce, punishment, injury, negative feelings, financial problems, and work difficulties. And if you listen to that list that I said, a lot of that does suck. I'm not going to take away from that. It is horrible to have a divorce and have to go through that. It does suck to have injuries, harboring negative feelings all the time, financial problems, work difficulties. But again, perspective drives reality. So, even in those situations, you can still choose to be happy. You can still choose to thrive. You can choose to have positive thoughts over negative thoughts. You can choose to, be financially smart and seek out financial strategies that'll help you get out of your problem. You can address work difficulties and create schedules and prioritize things like we discussed, so that it doesn't spill over into life, and that your work difficulties won't mess up everything else you have going on in your life. Injuries, it just takes time, but that'll give you time to focus and get your mind right and just recover properly. I've had a ton of injuries playing sports, being in the military, and just living, that rough life. But it is what it is. You just learn how to be smarter next time, and not just do things just to do things. At the end of the day, it is how an individual accepts stress that determines ultimately whether that person can adapt successfully to change. Because the one constant in life is change. There is always going to be change. Change is always going to be present, whether it's a change in your work life, a change in your love life, a change in your family dynamic, your other relationships, such as close friends and associates. There's always going to be change. You're always going to be growing. You're always going to be developing, ideally. And associated with change is stress. And just like the connotation that we put on change, whether it's positive or negative, we can put that same connotation on stress to make it positive or negative. And once we categorize it to better serve us, that's when we can start ushering in, the positive thoughts, the positive habits, reaffirming to ourselves that, change isn't bad, stress isn't bad, using stress as a motivator or something to push us as opposed to something to weigh us down. All the techniques that we've talked about in the podcast, we can take a negative thing and flip it to be a positive. The breathing and the meditation. If you get stressed out, go somewhere by yourself, take a couple breaths, center yourself, get focused, be grounded, be present. You're not in danger right now. You're good right now. You're safe right now. Just be present. Don't worry about the future. You can't do anything about the past. Don't stress. Don't stress. And I say that to you like it's easy. I mean, I stress out all the time. Like I've always said that I'm my own worst enemy. Like, people can say things about me and I'm not really too worried about it. But when I get in my own head, that's when the battle really starts. So when I say this, I'm actually speaking to myself, and I'm reaffirming to myself, don't stress, don't stress. It's just a stage. It's just an evolution I'm going through. It's only temporary. It's here for today, gone tomorrow. It won't even matter tomorrow. So, I'm just trying to imbue that same mindset in you as well. It's only here for today and gone tomorrow. And if it's something that you're gonna wake up and you know you're gonna go into tomorrow, and you're gonna have to face that stress again, face it with courage. Just make up in your mind that it won't be something that's gonna destroy you or work against you. Make up in your mind that you're gonna make the stress work for you. You are the master of your fate. You control your destiny. This journey is yours. This life is yours to live. And you have the choice to be stressed out, or the choice to be in the midst of chaos and all of this other craziness, but you're centered. You're the island in the midst of the storm. The ocean can do whatever it wants to do around you, but you're centered. You're not worried about it because your internal environment is calm and you know who you are.